Hey there, everybody. So, today I just want to have a kind of just an impromptu discussion on, just computer brain interfaces and why I just kind of think they're overhyped. I don't think they're, necessarily, fake technology or anything, but, I think, the direction that the technology is going in many contexts is just kind of boring. And I know that sounds kind of like a weird thing, so I want to kind of bring this back to, kind of my perspective on, interfaces and interface design and stuff. And there's two ways we can look at this. We can look at this as a virtual experience, like what is being expressed, symbolically, semiotically through the interface. For example, when you look at a screen, you see a bunch of symbols on the screen that represent things. And then we can also look at it as a structural thing that's inherent to the design of the physical machine itself. So for example, when we have the keyboards, right? A physical keyboard desktop, they have physical keys, right? And these keys delineate different spaces. That's why it's easier to touch type when you learn how to touch type on a keyboard than it is to do it on your phone, because on the phone there is a flat surface, right? And this is kind of goes into a big aspect of why I think that the direction that computer brain interfaces or brain computer interfaces is going is kind of lame, because it seems like a lot. So I've been kind of exposed to some of the research that's going on, and it just seems like a lot of it is about basically playing video games in virtual reality without the use of a controller. Now, obviously, there are some use cases for this kind of research in people who have full body paralysis or, locked-in syndrome, things like that. There's obviously value in that, but that's not really what the research is really interested in. The research is interested in this sort of kind of futuristic model of gaming where you just have a direct mind connection to the game, which I don't know, I just think that's really lame, right? Because when I think about what actually makes a game engaging, it's not just what's shown on screen, right? If I just want to have something that's shown on screen that I'm reacting to, it's kind of it's almost kind of like making a movie that you react to, right? Where you're not physically participating. There isn't any sort of physical, granular, activity. And I think that we really need to think about this, right? So, for example, in the 2000s, right, the Nintendo Wii popularized motion controls. And the Nintendo Wii was actually extremely popular. It was the most successful console of that generation, which kind of blows people's minds. But it's because it was something that intuitively made sense to a lot of people in a sort of kinetic, like a physiokinetic kind of muscular way, right? There's a sort of intelligence that is embedded into your body itself, not just your brain, but your body. Something that I'm very critical of with a lot of these EEG, gaming things is that it's almost like they forget that there's neurons in other parts of your body, and they're not just listening to your brain. It's not just the reflexes either. There are complex intelligences that exist throughout your body that essentially allow your body to reinforce itself with physical reality and, essentially create an interface through your body with the real world. Right? And this is kind of where, I'm not getting the appeal of these mind read games or whatever. Because it's to me, part of what makes people want to have, for example, a wheel when playing racing games is because the physical sensation of a wheel is complementary to the actual experience. It's augmented. Right? I feel that augmented reality actually offers way more value to, experimental, experiences and things, because now you're integrating your entire body and even the environment with such an experience, right? I think that's what makes augmented reality potentially extremely powerful. You could even argue that some forms of architectural accessibility, such as what you might see on, what do you call, like those metal plates that blind people use to determine where streets are. That is a form of augmented reality, because it is a thing that is deliberately placed in our reality to signify and indicate and direct people's motion and activity through interfaces, right? And when I talk about accessibility, right, I'm not trying to change the discussion to disability, right? I think a lot of people here, when I say accessibility, it becomes like this identity politics thing. No, if your first fucking idea when you hear accessibility is identity politics, you need to shut the fuck up and stop listening to liberals, okay? Instead, sorry for getting mad about that, but it happens so often that I have to say that, right? Accessibility, instead, you should look at it as more as the real transhumanism, right? You know, the transhumanism fantasies that you hear about from these, like, startup bros? Well, there's a reason why they're startup bros, and why, like, actual prosthetics that has decades and decades of developments have, you know, firm standings in the medical market. It's because they actually understand and take seriously these interfaces of augmentation, right? Now, in my opinion, I think that, you know, something that I think is underexplored in just in gaming and experiences and art expression in general is actually the augmentation of brain-computer interfaces into augmented experiences. Imagine, so this is kind of like how, like, some of the most high-end prosthetics work, where they may use, you know, specialized AI that over time accumulates information, kinetic information about, you know, how you interact with the prosthetic to be able to, you know, have reliable and accurate, you know, interfacing. Like, basically, like, you get more and more good at it because it's cooperating with you to try to kind of find, you know, the, you know, Deleuzian wasp and orchid kind of situation, right? And, like, that, I think, represents the real frontier with, you know, brain-computer interfaces, because all of a sudden it gives us the ability to take pretty much any interface that we, you know, interact with on a machine or a computer, and potentially allows us to build, like, a feedback loop between our brain and that machine. You know, we could, you know, just like how people can be speedrunners and learn how to beat, like, Super Mario 64 in crazy amount of time, you know, we could see that kind of, you know, thing in everyday people, right? And I think that, you know, it's just frustrating when you see stuff like this, which is like, oh, EEG to text. Like, what is the purpose of that? Like, what? So you can turn it into a video game? That's stupid, right? Why not have it be like an augmented, you know, AI learning thing, right? That, you know, receives feedback from the kinetic human interactions, because that way you're not transcribing human, like, intention and human movement and all this stuff into a binary stream of text, right? You know, you might think, oh, text is not really binary. No, it's binary. Text is binary. You know, a signifying object is binary, right? Language, signifying semiotic language is binary. That's like a big part of Deleuze and Guattari, right? Where the binary forms, you know, through that, you know, semiosis and shit. I'm not getting into that right now because I'm too sick and tired. But basically what I'm saying is that the reduction of... It's like this obsession with virtuality and, like, not touching grass and screens and all of this stuff has made almost, like, young people not recognize that they are living in bodies, and it's not a barrier to existence. It is a essential part of existence to have a body, because it's what allows us to, you know, even have the substance to have structure, right? So, you know, it's crazy to just ignore like all of that. And again, I can't imagine a more boring gaming experience than just having my brain do it. Like, if I was paralyzed completely from the head down, I'd be thankful, because then I could play video games. But like, outside of a circumstance like that, I would much rather have some kind of physical device, especially a modular one. You know, I'm very pro modular accessibility, and you know, modularity and, you know, feedback machines and stuff like that would be like far more valuable, both for accessibility and for range of experiences, than any of this shit. So I think the real appeal is just that virtualization is cheap when you like automate it, because you can just replicate it a million times. Augmentation requires that you make physical things, and the reality is, I just have to say, these people, you're not going to cut out physical reality. I'm sorry. Like, you're still going to be running it on a physical computer. You're still going to have to deal with the physical reality of any sort of connective interface that you do develop. It's just that you're limiting what that interface can be by not thinking beyond, outside the box, outside of these sci-fi bullshits, you know?